Hello and welcome to Guelph GradCast, the only podcast dedicated to bringing you real conversations with real University of Guelph grads. I'm your host, Ryan, and yeah, I'm also a real Guelph grad. Today I'm joined by Kathryn Knowles. Kathryn graduated from the University of Guelph's Environmental Sciences Co-op program in 2024, where she majored in ecology. And although Kathryn is of no relation to another famous Knowles, given her passion for honeybee research, she's a bit of a queen bee herself. She is currently pursuing a Master's of Science in Biology at the University of Lethbridge in Alberta, where her research investigates factors that alter worker honeybee behavior and how it impacts interactions between queens and workers. Welcome to the podcast, Kathryn. How's your day so far?
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for having me. My day's pretty good.
Yeah. So I usually start these podcasts kind of with the same question. It's kind of a simple question, but kind of a hard one to answer.
Okay.
So why did you choose University of Guelph? What was it about the University of Guelph that kind of caught your attention, and also specifically why the program was you chose?
Yeah. Great question. So I attended high school just south of Guelph, in a town called Milton.
Oh, nice.
And I was given the opportunity to join a few environmental science classes. They had a couple green industries classes as well. And I just really enjoyed learning about ways that we can better the planet and be a cooperative system. And so I knew going forward, I wanted my career path to kind of reflect that. And I wanted the ability to explore and be a little bit adventurous in my career as well. And I know the University of Guelph is very famous for their agriculture background and environmental science background as well. And so that was a really big draw. But also their co-op program was a really big reason why I chose the university. I wanted that opportunity to really like get in the field and get hands-on. So that was a really big draw to attending Guelph.
And then how was your experience once you got here? Did it kind of meet your expectations, or were there some surprises or things you didn't expect?
I mean, I think any student that goes through university can say there were some surprises for sure. But overall, Guelph definitely exceeded my expectations. I think I left the university with a really great sense of where I wanted to go and kind of the direction that I wanted my career to take. It definitely is not the same as when I started university, and I think that's totally normal. Um, but yeah, no, it definitely, I left feeling really, really great with my time spent there.
You said it. You kind of went on a different path. What was your original like goal, and then what? How did it change?
Yeah, so I originally coming straight out of high school, I didn't have a lot of experience. I grew up in a town where there wasn't necessarily that much going on, or at least opportunities weren't presented themselves readily for me all the time.
Uh-huh.
So going into university was a little scary. I was surrounded by people who had already had years of experience, and I felt like I was behind. I originally wanted to study volcanoes and rocks. I wanted to climb up mountains and understand climate change and all of that. And yeah, after attending a few courses, I took the honeybee biology course just in the summertime because a part of the co-op program is your schedule shifts around a little bit. So I had to take a full course load in the summer. And I thought this would be a really fun course to take along with my other restricted electives. And I just ended up completely falling in love with it. And my entire career changed from food sustainability, climate management towards insect research, which is a bit of a jump. But yeah, no, I definitely found my calling with that.
And what was it about the honeybees that just kind of first made you realize this is something that you want to pursue?
Well, honeybees, first off, are just really cool. I think a lot of people are naturally drawn towards them. They're really interesting to research. Um, and also just the people that I met along the way at the university who worked there and the professors that I engaged with were super passionate. I've never met a group of people more passionate about a particular topic than being kind of in the entomology department. And I think that definitely drove my passion a little bit as well of kind of getting into that role and being a part of that community.
So then you're pretty deep into kind of the honeybee world. Is there any kind of like things that you learned while studying them that you didn't know before? Or maybe is there certain things that people have a misconception about honeybees?
Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions about honeybees. I don't know if you've seen the Bee movie.
I have. It's a little weird.
Yeah, it's very wrong.
Okay.
But it's okay. We can still enjoy it anyway. We can laugh. The Apiculture Club at the University of Guelph sometimes throws a movie night, and that is frequently one. So even though we know it's wrong, we can still enjoy it. um, I think the biggest misconception is that worker honeybees are male, so
Mhm.
that the males do all the work, but that's actually the opposite. It's a matriarch colony. So all of the workers are female. So all the ones collecting pollen and nectar to make honey and cooperating as a social unit are dependent upon the females, and the male bees are really just there for reproductive purposes. They're not really there for anything else. Having lots of them around just means that it's a great sign that your colony is doing really well, because they're kind of able to expend extra resources on producing them. But yeah, it's a matriarch colony. The queen, there's one queen. She does all of the laying inside of the hive. So all of the bees inside of the colony are either her daughters or sons, which is really interesting. Um, but yeah, I think I had no knowledge of honeybees prior. I mean, the Bee movie was also my closest thing that I could compare any knowledge to. Um, and I think getting into it, I just kind of went down a rabbit hole and I haven't left that hole since.
And so maybe this is a silly question. It's just something we kind of interact with quite often, but maybe I don't really understand what it is. What is honey?
Yes, that's a really great question.
It tastes good,
And
but
it
what is it?
tastes delicious, and some people might not like the answer, but essentially what a worker honeybee does is she goes to lots of flowers in her area. She forages really far distances depending on how far away forage availability is, and she uses her proboscis to suck up nectar from the flower, and she stores it in a second false stomach called the honey stomach, or her crop is another term for it, the crop. She stores the nectar inside of her body, and then she brings it back into the colony, and she regurgitates it up into a cell that they've made. And then it goes through a series of evaporation stages, trying to reduce the moisture out of the honey, kind of like making maple syrup. They're trying to take out some of the water. So the workers will actually suck up some of the nectar and regurgitate it back up using their body heat. And then it'll go through another stage where they fan their wings over top of the cells to draw even more moisture out. And they're trying to reach around 20% or less moisture ideally. And once it reaches that stage, they cap it over with a layer of wax. And that's what the end result is honey. So really, I like to say it's just bee vomit in a way that they've kind of reduced down. But you're right, it is delicious. Just don't think about where it's coming from.
And are they protective of the honey, or do that's just a byproduct? They don't really care at that point. Like, are they upset when you kind of extract it, or?
Honeybees are really great at expanding. So beekeepers, what they do is they keep adding room inside the hive. So they keep adding
Mhm.
boxes to make that space even bigger. So the honeybees, as long as their population is really strong and they have enough of them, they will keep filling that space up. So when a beekeeper goes to take away, they're kind of none the wiser to it in a way. They just kind of think, oh, we only have this much amount of space. So it's the beekeeper's job to do a good job of leaving them enough food so that they don't think that they're in some sort of dearth where they're not able to have enough resources, but also giving them enough space so that they can produce enough honey for the beekeeper as well.
Interesting. So, obviously at Guelph, you kind of discovered this passion. Was there anything else about being at Guelph that you particularly enjoyed, or if you look back that you're fond of, or?
Oh, so much, so much. um, the whole campus, I mean, it's beautiful. I think it's a pretty famous campus for a reason. I loved exploring the arboretum and all of the green spaces. That was really an important aspect. The community, the professors that I met there, and other working professionals, they were all very kind. And I felt like as long as you showed an interest, and worked hard, they were always able to kind of reward you with the ability to engage in that experience, which was really lovely. Um, and like going back even more just about campus space, the library was, I lived there pretty much my entire first year, and even
Uh-huh.
afterwards, it was just such a hub. It's not always that a library at a university is kind of the center of the campus, but the McLaughlin Library definitely is at the University of Guelph. Everybody would meet there for group meetings, or if you just needed time to study. That was a really wonderful space. Yeah.
Yeah, I always appreciate how like everything on the Guelph campus is walkable. You know what I mean? Like you don't have
Yes.
to take a bus to another side of town. And like you said, the library is right in the middle. It's like really close.
Yeah.
I may have taken the odd nap there in between classes. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a pretty great spot. It's a pretty great spot. Yeah, it definitely feels like you're in kind of this bubble almost when you're at Guelph. You're kind of in this your own little community where everything you would ever need is in there. Yeah, it's just very inviting.
Yes, and that, especially with the architecture, like the bit of the old and the new, it does very much feel like I always say it like a movie. Like when you see a movie and they're like, oh, they cut to them being in college, and it's like they show the campus with the big old building, and it's like that's Johnson Green.
Yeah.
Um, and so now you graduated last year. You've been away for about a year now. Is there anything you miss now that you've been to reflect on it?
Yeah. Um, there's definitely a few things. I mean, I love what I'm doing here and I love what I'm researching. But having the ability to take really fun courses,
Hmm.
I think people should really take advantage of that. And I know it's really important to stick to your degree, but I think it's also important to explore a little bit. Um, Through exploration was how I found what I'm doing now. So I definitely miss the accessibility of taking really interesting courses that have nothing to do with my degree. Like I took the history of religion, and that was really, really cool to see. Um, I think once you kind of leave university and all of your peers start kind of going off in different directions, it it can be a little bit difficult to feel like you're a part of something. So I think that's important to remember coming out of university. Just making sure to remember about the community that you built there, even when everybody's across the world or across the country. Um, yeah.
Do you still
I,
keep in touch with the people you went to school with, or like even the professors and
yes.
stuff?
Yeah, definitely. I worked at the Honeybee Research Center for about 3 years, and I'm still in pretty close contact with a lot of the people there. And I know that they're doing a grand opening sometime next year, so I'm hoping to come back for that and say hi to everybody. And my peers, I definitely keep in touch with. I have one friend, she's currently in Scotland pursuing her master's, and another, she's on the East Coast as well doing her master's, and they're doing really exciting things. So it's great to hear about what they're doing now. And we all really enjoyed our time at Guelph, and we were all in the environmental science co-op stream. So yeah, that's really cool.
And so you just mentioned it, co-op. What was that like? What were your placements, and how did that help you?
Yeah, so my first placement was with a STEM and engineering equipment supplier out of Oakville. So I had a bit of an interesting co-op experience because it happened right in the middle of COVID.
Oh,
So
fair.
I hate to keep bringing up COVID, but unfortunately, it's something that still impacted my degree in some way. So my first co-op was with a STEM and engineering equipment supplier, and I was just, working with like customer relations, and I had a really great experience there, seeing the corporate, more professional business side of things. And then in the fall, I transitioned to working with the region of Peel, where I worked in like the hazardous waste management sector. So very different,
Yeah.
which I really like. I had completely a 180 with what I was doing. So you got to explore a little bit and see what worked for you. And I liked how The second job was more hands-on and I was up and about. And that's during that time is when I started volunteering at the Honeybee Research Center. So I was working full-time and then volunteering 1 day a week. And then I came back the next summer. So for my third co-op, I actually started working at the Honeybee Research Center. So I did my co-op with them, and then I returned for a final year as well. So I did my last co-op with them as
Nice.
well.
And did you
Yeah,
find like getting that hands-on experience was like help reinforce what you were learning and kind of contributed to your overall?
for sure. Yeah, I loved my degree as it was. Like I loved all the courses and all the experience that I gained, but I think the co-op opportunity definitely made my degree really, really worth it for me because I got to play around with what I liked and what I didn't like. I got to find, oh, I'm really not interested in pursuing this particular kind of career, so I won't try that. Let's try something new. And you just get to taste different experiences and see what's going to be for you because everybody's a little bit different. Um, so that was really a wonderful opportunity. And yeah.
Yeah, it's always interesting. Like I always think about it too. Like say, like when you travel to another country or you're planning your trip and you have expectations of what that trip's going to be and what things you want to see, and it's always different once you're there. And I imagine it's the same for
Yes.
co-op in your career. Like I'm really interested in learning about this. I want to do this, and then you do it, and you're like, I don't know if I like this, or maybe I like this
Yeah.
more. And sometimes that's okay.
Yeah. I think there's some sort of phenomenon where people go to Paris and they're suddenly let down by the city in general. I don't know if that's just not what they're expecting and they've built such an expectation. So I think for me, coming into university, I was so gung-ho for studying rocks. And then I got into that and I thought, oh, mm, I don't know if this is for me. Maybe we'll switch paths a little bit. So you never know what you're going to find and what's going to be your calling.
That's quite a contrast because I've read that, like as interesting as like rocks and that geology is, they're very simple in a way, but living creatures are really, really complex. They're probably the most complex things in the universe, right? Um,
Yeah.
and so, you're at Guelph, and then when did the kind of thought pop in your head that you wanted to go further and pursue your master's? And then how did you end up where you are now, which is in Alberta?
Yeah. So I think I had in the back of my mind that I wanted to pursue a master's pretty early on. I'd say even in high school or first year university, while I didn't know what that would be, I think in some capacity I knew I wanted to do further education. I think that just has to go back to the way I was raised. Education was really important for my family. So we were always kind of pushed to go as far as you can. And I was lucky enough that I had the opportunity to do that. So I believe in my third year, beginning my third year, I started thinking about, well, what did I want to what I wanted to do afterwards. Once I kind of narrowed down my field of study a little bit, I started chatting with people on campus, so other grad students that, were TAing my courses and professors, and I just reached out to them and asked if we could have a chat. So I had many chats with PhD and master's students in the Summerlee Science Complex,
Okay.
just in front of the little coffee hut there. um, and I just kind of picked their ear and what they liked about their program, what they didn't like, advice for incoming master's students. So I really gave myself about 2 years of just exploring that option a little bit, working slowly. I didn't want to be rushed at the end because I
Hmm.
knew that would be very stressful.
For sure.
So I kind of advise anybody thinking about doing a master's or furthering their education, just kind of slowly trickling in those options. And it
Hmm.
makes it a little bit more manageable so you don't feel bombarded with the weight of trying to apply.
Hmm.
So yeah, by like second, third year, I kind of knew I definitely wanted to do a master's. And then in my fourth and then my final kind of half year finishing up my co-op was when I really solidified my plans about coming to Alberta.
Nice. And so tell me a bit about what you're doing in Alberta right now. I know you're doing some research with honeybee behavior.
Yeah, so I'm currently supervised by Dr. Shelley Hoover at the University of Lethbridge. And the reason why I wanted to come to Alberta was really just for personal exploration reasons. I've always wanted to travel ever since I was a kid, and I knew I wanted to incorporate that in some way, whether through my degree or through my future career. So I started looking at schools outside of Ontario, just for like personal growth reasons. Um, and my research here is mainly focused on queen worker interactions. So in the beekeeping industry, it's really common for beekeepers to replace queens. It could be for several reasons. Maybe she's not performing productively, or she's getting a little bit older, so they want to replace her with a younger queen, just to ensure the colony is staying really nice and productive. But because of Canada's cold climate, especially for around 6 to 8 months of the year, it makes it really difficult for beekeepers to produce their own queens. So a lot of the time they end up importing them from other countries. So California, Hawaii, Chile, Australia, New Zealand, Italy, and Denmark are the really big sources. So it's a lot of time and money are being spent on bringing in queens from other countries, but that doesn't necessarily mean that queen being put into a colony is necessarily going to be accepted. The colony can still reject her, even if she's seemingly very healthy, just because it's such a complex social organism. There's a lot
Uh-huh.
going on influencing her ability to be accepted by that colony. So my research is focused on understanding that behavior a little bit better, whether the decision-making process in a way is coming from the colony itself and maybe the conditions in the colony, or whether they're able to read something about the queen and whether or not she would be um, a good queen to accept. So
Hmm.
that's mainly what I'm looking at.
So in the wild, I don't know if that's the right term, but how would a queen be replaced?
Yes. So it's a bit of an interesting process. Normally, a colony would need to produce a new queen during the time of year where swarming is really prevalent. So in the springtime, when there's a lot of pollen, there's a lot of nectar coming in, the colony is rapidly increasing their population. And it gets to the point where the colony is so full that they need to essentially split off. So what they'll do is the old queen will stop laying, and that causes her body to shrink a little bit so she's able to fly. So her abdomen shrinks down. She loses a little bit of weight so she's able to travel. And during that process, they will start producing new queens. So what they do is they use their mandibles and they remove one of the really, really small larvae that the old queen has laid, and they transfer it into a larger cell called a queen cell. And it's essentially the same as a normal cell where like they would lay any type of worker bee or a drone or anything, but it's just bigger. So there's more room, and they feed the developing larva higher amounts of royal jelly. And I don't know if you know what royal jelly is, but it's a secretion that worker bees secrete from their heads,
Okay. Oh yes, of
from
course.
their yeah, of course, because why not? So yeah, they secrete it by um eating large amounts of protein, and the hypopharyngeal glands develop this secretion, and they cover this little larva in this royal jelly substance. And by giving it large enough quantities, that's actually able to help it um, produce reproductive organs and kind of pushes it into the queen caste system. So technically, genetically, workers and queens are identical. It's just what they're fed during that development stage that's able to make them into a queen where she's able to reproduce with male bees. Workers aren't able to reproduce with male bees because they haven't developed that ability to have certain internal reproductive organs. And as the queen is growing, the larva gets bigger, and then just before the new queen emerges out of a cell, the old queen will leave with about half of the workers, and they'll find a new home. So normally this would be like a hollow tree somewhere, or unfortunately sometimes in people's walls.
Yeah.
And about a day later, the new queen will emerge and she'll take over that hive and she'll stay with the original colony.
I had no idea. I never really thought about it. You heard the word queen. It is kind of cool that each worker has the potential to be a queen. I wonder if that motivates
Yeah.
them a little bit.
Yeah, it is really interesting, and there's so much information about what goes into choosing those specific larvae that would become a queen. It's just amazing that the workers are able to analyze the conditions in the colony and choose what's best for them. So,
Hmm. And is this kind of complex, like social hierarchy? Is this like fairly unique to honeybees? I feel like ants have a similar. I'm just making a judgment there, but like I'm assuming it's
yeah.
similar. But I'm is honeybees fairly unique in terms of their social structures?
Yeah, so definitely they share some similarities with things like ants. I don't know too much about ants, but they have similar systems where they have worker bees, guard, or not bees, but worker ants, guard ants. They have queens, and whatnot. And so honeybees are similar in that regard, but they're really special because they have they have developed an evolutionary arms race where the workers and queens are kind of influencing themselves to create an even more complex structure. So workers technically once had the ability to lay eggs. So millions of years ago, as they were evolving, they had ovipositors. And as they developed into this complex social structure, those ovipositors became stingers. So that's why female honeybees are the only ones with stingers. Male bees actually can't sting. Um, And so it's kind of an evolutionary arms race where the queen, in a way, is suppressing a worker's ability to lay, but the worker is also trying to lay as well. So they have a complex pheromone structure in the hive that's working against each other, kind of making it an even more complex social unit where
Hmm.
you have really specific caste structures or social structures. So the queen, her duties, the workers, their duties, and then the drones. Um, that pheromone bouquet and everything going on in the colony is making that happen, which is really cool.
I don't know. Maybe you have a goal, but what is your kind of long term goal after you finish your master's? Do you know where you want to go and what you want to do next, or what you want to pursue?
Yeah, so I think in a way I'm still exploring a little bit. I think a master's is a really great opportunity to do that. You get to see a little bit of everything, whether you'd like to continue down the academic route or not. So in a way, I'm still exploring, but I know that I really enjoy working with the public and I really enjoy engaging with beekeepers. So I know whatever future career I pursue or end up being in, I think it's going to integrate that kind of public sector aspect to it, and public education aspect to it.
Is there anything, maybe this is too big of a question. Is there something like a specific piece of information you would love more people to know about bees?
About bees, oh my goodness. So much I have to pick. I think, well, for just the general public, I think it'd be really important for people to understand the difference between native bees and honeybees. So honeybees are not native to North America. They were brought over in around the 1600s, mainly for things like wax for making candles and then also for a source of sugar. And since then, they have become a really great partner in terms of modern agricultural systems. And there's a lot of information that people are hit with regarding save the bees and honeybees versus non-native bees. But I think it's important to remember that honeybees exist here in partnership with our current agricultural system. So in a way, they are tied to agriculture in a way that things like non-native bees are not. So I think it's just important to remember when researchers are talking about making healthy honeybee colonies, it's in service of being able to produce things like fruits and nuts and other things like that. So they are really important for food sustainability purposes. And then when we talk about saving the bees, I think it's important to remember that things like non-native bees are very different and are very important for other reasons. And I think a lot of people originally started out thinking save the bees meant all bees, including honeybees, and then they became a little annoyed when they realized honeybees are not native to North America. But they are still really necessary in terms of our current modern food system. So I think it's just important for people to do their research and understand the differences between the two, and understand that keeping honeybee colonies protected and safe is still able to exist at the same time as conserving native populations, which is just as important, and should be tackled even more.
Yeah, I had no idea. Um, and so then wasps, are wasps just jerks? Do we need to save them?
They can be jerks, can't they?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I've been stung by a few wasps, and I will say it definitely hurts more than a honeybee. Unfortunately, when a honeybee stings, or at least a worker, her stinger sticks into your skin, and so she unfortunately will die. And that's just because they have barbed stingers. But wasps are, at least not all species of wasps, there's so many, are not like that. So they can sting you multiple times, and are very defensive. So I don't know too much about wasps, but I think it's best to just leave them alone. I know people get really afraid of bees and wasps, but the more you swing around and flap your hands in the air, the more likely they're going to go to you because they're attracted to your movement. So if you just remain calm, I know it's really hard, but if you just stay really chill, then most of the time they're going to be pretty good with you, and just leave their nest alone. Don't bug them.
Are they attracted to your breath, or is that mosquitoes?
I think I have heard that in a way they are able to sense like changes in carbon dioxide levels. I don't know too much about that. I've definitely been in and around the hive and breathing all over it, and they don't necessarily change their behavior, but I'm sure somebody has done research somewhere talking about that.
Well, I don't want to keep you too long because I assume you're a busy person. Is there anything we didn't talk about that you want to talk about?
I think, we talked about a lot, but I think just the last little bit of advice I'd like to tell students is just to keep an open mind going into university. I know it can seem like a lot where you're taking really advanced math courses or chemistry courses, and it can feel really, really difficult. But I think if you're able to push past that to the point where you're able to explore, it just really opens up the world of education to you. Um, and yeah, don't knock any particular subject out of the way until you kind of explore everything. I know I talked a little bit about this in my Q&A session, where statistics, for example, can seem like something you don't really want to get into, but given the right context, it can be really interesting. So yeah, just try to keep an open mind and explore and have fun. I know that sounds tricky when you've got a lot of courses and exams coming up, but definitely give yourself room to enjoy your time there.
No, that's really good advice. I find, even though sometimes it doesn't seem like a true through line to say something you're learning or experience you have, you'd be surprised how that kind of carries over into your career and your life. Like a job, maybe part-time job that you did in high school, there was something you learned while you were in that job that actually helped in school or in your career. And then
For
that speaks
sure.
for other courses as well.
For sure.
Well, thank you, Kathryn. I really appreciate you kind of taking the time to talk with me. I imagine it's quite early for you right now, so I
It's
thank you.
about 7:40,
But
so
good for you.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I've got a full day, so
Great. If you like what you heard today, please do like and subscribe. Maybe throw us a review. That always helps. For the latest updates, be sure to follow us on all our socials, and you can always find out more at uofguelph.ca, and I'll put all the links in the show notes. I should say also our show's theme music is by Paige Rutledge, who's also a Guelph grad, and we'll be back next time with another interview with another great Guelph grad. So till next time, thank you so much, and thank you again, Kathryn.
thank you so much.